Hey there, music maker. One of the most common things that I'm asked to fix in my private students playing is turning their soloing from scale noodling over top of chord changes to actual melodic content. Now, that's a really hard thing to fix inside of the context of a 10-minute video here on YouTube, but one thing that I think is really essential to that process of turning your solos from scale noodling into actual melodic content is practicing your scales with intervals and triads. One of the most common mistakes that I think we make as guitar players when we get started out is just taking these scales that we're given from our teachers and practicing them religiously up and down in positions, you know? Etc. That's a really useful exercise to get those notes memorized and under your fingers, but pretty rapidly that becomes kind of just a rote exercise in note memorization and pattern memorization on the guitar. One of the things that we need to do in order to get those scales to sound less like linear up and down scales and more like melodic solo content is to emulate the melodic solo content that we love by using intervals and triads to practice those scale patterns. Now, what does that look like on the guitar? It doesn't really matter what types of scale shapes and patterns you've learned. If you prefer the 3 fingers to a string kind of patterns or your caged shapes or anything like that, the stuff that I'm gonna show you here today applies to any major scale pattern that you're going to workshop. So let's just use this kind of standard G shape with our middle finger on the 3rd fret down here. And you should have that one with the tab and diagram on the screen there. So starting to play your scales in thirds is a really great way to just break up the monotony. But for a lot of you out there, that's probably already a pattern you know as well. So the next thing that we need to think about is playing all of the different interval types on that scale pattern. So what's after thirds? Fourths. Sounds pretty weird, right? But some of those patterns will come in useful in solos later. What's after fourths? Fifths. After fifths, sixths. And then the weirdest one, sevenths. So there already is a slew of exercises that you can use to emulate virtually any interval and melodic pattern that you're going to see inside of a solo from one of your favorite improvisers. Now, intervals are not the last stop on this train, my friend, if you want to turn your scales from just linear noodling into melodic patterns. The next thing that we need to look at is practicing triads within each of these scale positions that we're working with. And the way that I like to do that first is just kind of line out all of my triads in position. So for this G major position, it's going to look like this. And then we can keep moving up out of position to complete the pattern. And then back down. And I usually like to play that melodic pattern just like I did there. So 2 eighth notes followed by a quarter note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and etc. Oftentimes the fingering is a little weird for these triad patterns, that it's hard to play them as successive eighth notes. But if you do want to play them as successive eighth notes, I like to do this ascending then descending triad pattern like this. So up the first triad, and then down the second one, and then up, down. So in time, that one sounds like this. And then obviously, just like with any pattern, you want to descend that pattern as well as ascend it. Okay, so this is where we're going to stop for today. You should have enough work ahead of you to turn those boring linear scales into something that's more like melodic material that you're going to find in your favorite solos, or material that you would just want to use in your own solos. Now you may be wondering, how do you actually apply this to improvisations? If that's something you're interested in, then what I would say is to take one or two of these tools that we've worked on here today, get a backing track like Strum Machine queued up, and then vamp on a chord and see if you can practice some of these intervallic patterns. One thing that I really like to do is use that triad pattern, but in really small chunks, to create what I like to think of as chord encircling patterns for certain notes in a triad. For example, if we're playing over a G chord, there's our G triad, right? And if we do that descending A minor triad, the next note that comes after that is a B note. So we can almost view the first two triads as a little figure that targets the B note, the third of the G chord. So you can use that as a little melodic phrase to play over your G chords. You see what I'm talking about already? So you can kind of take some of these patterns and strategically use them to target certain chord tones in order to get really neat, fresh sounding melodic patterns. All right, my friend, I hope that's been some good information from how to turn those boring scales into something a little more interesting for you. If you stuck around this long and enjoyed the lesson, go ahead and hit that like button below and the subscribe button to get updates when I upload a new video here to the channel. And if you'd like a PDF of all of the exercises and intervals from today's lesson, go ahead and check out the link below to the Guitar Club, which is my premium membership service. We've even got a free tier there where you can find a lot of these lessons and their associated PDFs at no cost to you. All right, my friend, hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Thanks so much for sticking around. We'll catch you in the next one.